everybody. Welcome back. It's Mr. Hartman here again. Wrapping up topic 2, the trade networks topic, with a comparison of the economic exchange networks. Right, and we're going to kind of jump right in here. We have similarities and we have differences. Let's start with the similarities, right? They kind of talk about the 3 major trade routes, which of course are going to be the Silk Roads, right? The Silk Roads, the Indian Ocean, and the Trans-Saharan Trade Network. And those are the 3 major trade routes of the era. Okay. One similarity between all of them, let me get this out here. One similarity is their origin, right? We see all of these built on kind of previous trade networks, right? Especially the Silk Roads and the Indian Ocean were built upon previous trade networks, right? So we see that they were built upon older trade networks, older agrarian society trade networks, right? What we also see here is they were built upon the expansion of states, right? Expansion of empires and kingdoms, right? These empires and kingdoms, like the Romans, like the Han before them, and then in this era, the Abbasids, the Tang and the Song, and then the Mongols, right, helped expand those empires, right? So the expansion of empires and kingdoms leads to the expansion of trade routes. Okay. What we also see is that these states, the reason that they help lead to expansion of trade is stability, right? Stability brought to trade, right? They brought the stability needed that allowed for trade to flourish, right? Especially because one of the key things about these trade routes is that they needed protection, right? And so this protection created by these large states, right? These large states want to protect trade in their empire so that people are more likely to trade, right? The other thing is that we also help see the kind of the spread of new technologies, right? Helped on by these stable empires, right? Because again, that kind of just comes with the trade. But also, what you see is these states want their traders, these merchants, and their people to have these new technologies because it makes their lives better, makes the economy better, right? So we talk about things like the compass and the sail, right? New crops, right? And then new saddles as well, right? All benefited from having strong trade or strong states, right? They all share the same purpose and the same goal in mind, which obviously is to make money, right? Create this system where people could grow what they want, right? What's most profitable, right? Grow or produce. Produce what's most profitable. Okay, what we see here, it's mostly an economic goal, right? But we have some kind of side things happening in each of these, right? We see diplomats and diplomats and missionaries travel the roads, travel along the trade routes, right, and help bring together different types of cultures and religions and stuff like that, right? And another similarity is the effects that they all see, right? Especially the growth of trade cities. Okay, and there's a chart there that kind of lists out all the major trade cities. They are important to know. I'm not going to list them here, but Chang'an and Samarkand, Aleppo and Mosul on the Silk Roads, and the Indian Ocean, Malacca, Calicut, Hormuz, Mombasa, and Alexandria, and the Trans-Saharan, Gao, Timbuktu, Marrakesh, and Cairo. Um, so another effect, right, is a growth and centralization of states. Okay, so the example they give in particular is the Kingdom of Malacca. Right, it's kind of one of the examples, but they already talked about the Rajput Kingdom of Gujarat as well, right? As kind of an example in the previous section. Okay, and so the reason this promotes growing civilization is to prevent piracy and banditry, right? To prevent, which we kind of already talked about up here on the expansion of these empires, right? And then also, so yeah, I don't think there's too much more to say there, right? We also see the development of standardized currency as a way to make trade a little bit more stable and a little more predictable. Okay. So yeah, those are major similarities. Okay. And so all of these are different effects, right? So there's three effects: the growth of trade cities, growing centralization, and development of standard currency, right? Now our differences, right? Obviously, one is goods that were the actual goods that were exchanged, um, the way it was transported, and the technologies that were spread and religions that were spread. I'm not going to go into all the details here. There's a huge table here, right? But the Silk Roads, let's kind of focus on some key things here, right? On the Silk Roads, right? We saw Buddhism as kind of the major religion spread there. We also saw Islam, and to a lesser extent Neo-Confucianism. I'm actually not going to put Neo-Confucianism. I don't think Neo-Confucianism is due to Silk Road spread, right? That was already kind of going on, right? But they talked about some major goods, which obviously include things like silk. In the Indian Ocean, right, we also see Buddhism, but mostly, especially, we see Islam there for sure. That's kind of the major one I want to focus on. And same thing with the Trans-Saharan, right? We also see Islam spread there. No, Christianity not super spread. They did talk about Christianity in the Indian Ocean, but again, I think I'd rather focus on kind of the main ones there. Okay. A second major difference here is the currency used. Currency used in each was different. They talk about silk being a currency in some places. In Southeast Asia, they talk about tin. West Africa using cowrie shells. But kind of to help combat this, right, we do see China develop the concept of flying cash, right? The idea of being able to deposit money in one location, get a kind of receipt, and then turn it in for the money in a different location, right? We also see the kind of creation of banks as well. The first kind of banking institutions, not quite banks as we think about them today, but pretty close, right? And then credit, right? The idea of being able to credit an account, right, even if you don't have the money, right? Okay, so those are our major differences. And then the last thing I do want to talk about here is this is not neither similarities or differences. I just poorly drew out this table here. Social implications of these trade networks, right? So we see a growing demand for luxuries outside of the upper classes. Sorry, this is very very curvy, right? We see growing demand for luxuries, right? Let's see if I can correct this a little bit, right? We see proto-industrialization in China, right? The growth of the kind of pre-industrial type of society, right? Okay, what else do we see here? We also see a growth of maritime trade, which I'm not going to focus too much on. We see an increased demand for labor, right? We see an increased demand for labor. I feel like I'm getting closer to making this a little more straight, right? And so we see all types of workers that we talked about before, right? We talked about free peasant farmers, craft workers and artisans, kind of debt slavers, and just slavery in general, right? We also see kind of organized labor for large-scale projects, right? And specifically, they talk about the reservoirs in the Vijayanagara Empire. Okay. We still mostly see a patriarchal and class-based societies. Right. Nothing really changed there, which, hey, it hasn't mostly changed till 2020. We see patriarchal and class-based societies. Right. There are some examples of women having a lot more control. Mongol women, in particular, had a lot more control over themselves. They did not take the veil up in the Muslim world. They did not take up foot binding in the Chinese world. Right. They did not kind of bend to those things. They could also become advisors, right, to the Khan. We do see European women have their own guilds. Right, they have their own guilds, and they can work, but I wouldn't necessarily qualify them as being a super gender balanced society, especially compared to the Mongols. Southeast Asia, women basically ran the marketplace, right? The local marketplaces, right? Right. They had a lot of power, especially in Vietnam, within their society, right? And then they didn't talk about this, but also in Africa, right? In Africa, we also see a lot more gender equality, right? Because women kind of were in charge of farming, right? But for the most part, we're still seeing a mostly patriarchal society there, right? In most of the world. Okay. Lastly, we have some environmental issues. Specifically, of course, the Black/bubonic plague, right, which actually led to a massive population decrease. Despite, well, it leads to a population decrease, but on the whole, we do see these trade routes increase population, right? And so we also see deforestation and soil erosion due to the new demands of trade goods, right? More trade goods leads to more farming, leads to more deforestation and soil erosion and overgrazing as well. Okay. That's going to be it for topic 2.7 and topic 2. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one.